Well, we're here, ladies and gentlemen. The Fear Street trilogy has now come to an end with Fear Street Part 3, 1666, where we go back to the beginning where this all started. We really find out what happened, and there's quite a few twists and turns here that I definitely was not expecting. And as I mentioned in my Part 2 review, Part 3 was definitely the one I was least looking forward to because 1666, yeah. But honestly, I really liked it because first of all, you were only in the 1666 part of it for like the first half of the movie, the first hour-ish of this film, and then we went back to present day. So I didn't like that, but we'll talk about that more later. But when it comes to the actual 1666 part of this movie, I thought it was great. I mean, just the way they recreated what it was really like in 1666. I mean, obviously, I don't know because I wasn't alive back then. That was a long time ago. But, like, the look of life in 1666, like, their clothes, the accents, the language that they use, like, the very, I don't even know what to call, like almost like Shakespearean, but not quite, but like the more fancy kind of words. It was really cool, and some of their accents were a little off, but I think for the most part it was really cool seeing that recreation of life in 1666, and I think they did a really good job of showing that off. And one of the best parts of 1666 is that we, of course, got to see the returning cast. So all of these cast members that we got used to and fell in love with in Part 1, 1994, and also Part 2, 1978, have returned. We got to see Sarah Feir, the origin of Sarah Feir, through the body of Dina. And we got to see Josh and Sam and even characters that died in these other movies, which I think was really awesome. And like I was mentioning again in my review from last week, that's really the best way to do it. Instead of introducing a whole new cast for this movie, I think this was the best way of doing it because again, we fell in love with these cast members and these characters, and a lot of their characters that they played in 1666 were very similar to their characters in their other movies, which I think was another great element to add into it. And before we do get into spoilers here, one last thing that I do want to add that is kind of a gripe for this movie is that there wasn't really much actual horror. The first two movies they really went for, especially in Part 2, there was a lot of stabby stabs all throughout the movie. But in this movie, not really too much. I mean, there was a couple different things at the beginning of the movie in 1666, but as we went back to present day, there wasn't really too much, or at least not as much graphic stuff, which honestly, I don't mind. But, this is a horror movie, so you do kind of expect there to be more blood and guts and, killings and stuff like that. So that is one minor gripe for this film. But I still thought it was cool. I really enjoyed seeing the origin of Sarah Feir, how she lost her hand, how she was hung, and really you get to find out what's going on with her. And like I said, there is a pretty big reveal and twist before we get into present day, and it was a pretty big one. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that now and start getting into the spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, Fear Street Part 3, 1666, then you're going to want to turn away now. Definitely go check it out and come back later. But let's talk about these spoilers, because it's revealed that the curse of Sarah Feir as this witch really isn't a thing. She's not a witch. She was actually completely innocent. She was hung for no reason. She was completely framed, and I mean, she did set a curse, but all of these killings and murders have nothing to do with her. She's not the one responsible for that. It's actually the Good family. And it all started with Solomon Good and now continues all the way into present day with Sheriff Nick Good. And wow, I can't believe in the last movie when we got young Nick, he was one of my favorite characters in the movie. And every time he popped up and it seemed like he was about to die, I was crossing my fingers like, please don't kill him. Please don't kill him. He's a cool character. But you know what? Now I wish they did, because they could have stopped all of this from happening. But nope. It was all Nick the whole time. But this does, of course, lead to our final confrontation with this big villain. And honestly, like I said, this was not something I was expecting for it to be revealed, that this was all due to Nick Good and the whole Good family and bloodline. I thought that was a really cool twist that I was not expecting. But this does kind of lead to our kind of Avengers Endgame type final battle in this movie, because, you know, this is the end of the trilogy. It's supposed to wrap up the whole story, and that is something I was wondering about going into this. Like, I didn't even think about being not 1666 for the whole movie, like how last movie it was 78 for the whole thing, except like the last maybe 10 minutes was back present day. So I didn't really think about that, but I was really pleasantly surprised by that. So I really enjoyed seeing that element of it. And then just getting this crazy final battle where we got some really cool stuff with, for example, seeing all of these murderous killers and psychopaths fighting each other. That was a really cool part. Honestly, probably the best part of this movie, where we saw all of them battling each other because they got the I don't even remember what it was called that they sprayed on them, but that was an awesome fight scene. How we saw all of them, you know, ripping each other to parts. That was great to see. And then we get our final confrontation between Dina and Nick Good, and see how she's able to get him to touch the gross gooey blob thing, and then he is haunted by that Sarah Feir curse and just sees all of those dead bodies and all those people that have been killed due to what he's been doing and his whole family. And then that just gives Dina enough time to stab him in the eye and kill him and end this once and for all, because once he's dead, the curse is gone, all of the murders disappear. Sam is now free from her possession, and now the day is saved. And we get a couple different resolutions here, like for example, Ziggy finally gets to kind of patch things up with Nurse Lane, and we wrap up that storyline there. And we get to see Josh. He actually ends up meeting the girl that he was talking to online in the first movie. That was something I completely forgot about, but I am glad that they finally revealed it, that yeah, there is an actual girl, and now she goes to his school, so it looks like he's got a bit of a romance in his future. And finally, Dina and Sam finally get to live happily ever after, because really this whole trilogy was about those two and their relationship as a couple and their romance. Because if you think about it, like the first movie was all about, all right, Sam getting possessed, or like all of the murderers being after her specifically and them needing to try and save her. The second movie was all about finding out what happened at Camp Nightwing so that they could then figure out how to save Sam. And then the third movie, again, trying to save Sam. So it really was all about their romance. So I am glad that they ended off the film in that way. But there was a post-credit scene, kind of. If you didn't know about this, yes, there was a post-credit scene. Except there wasn't really a post-credit scene. It was kind of like mixed into the credits. It was actually kind of cool, because like the credits started and then it would flash into the post-credit scene, and it would keep flashing back and forth between the credits and the scene. And throughout this whole scene, it was showing this journey through the Shadyside Mall, down underground, where you see that the Book of Sarah Feir, or I think it was the Book of Sarah Feir, it was some kind of evil witchcraft book that Solomon Good used back in the day to contact the devil and really get this whole thing started. That was left down there, and now our final shot in this post-credit scene is that we see somebody grabs that book and takes it away, and that is where it ends. And you know, this was the end of the trilogy, so you'd think there'd be nothing left, but clearly there's something more. I actually just watched an interview with the director of this film saying that is intentional, and they do have ideas for other projects. It just depends on if they actually get made and greenlit. And honestly, I really hope they do, because this was a fun trilogy that I really enjoyed. Again, this is my first experience with horror movies, and I thought it was great. It gave off some great Stranger Things vibes, but like with the darker, more gory, more violent tones here. And I just thought it was a great trilogy. I'd love to see more. I'd love to see spin-offs, maybe even explore some of these other killers throughout history, because of course part 2 was all about exploring basically the origin of the Camp Nightwing killer. So I'd love to see origins for some of these other killers as well. I think that'd be pretty cool, exploring these different periods throughout time, which was another great part of this trilogy, is just how every film is at a different point in time, and you've got different stuff that's going on in that era. So that was a great element, and again, I'd like to see that explored more in the future. But again, we don't know for sure where this is going to go, when it's going to go. And actually, something I completely forgot to mention is who I actually think took that book. I'm thinking the most likely option is actually Nick Good's brother, who we know is the mayor. I think that is the most likely option, although it could be Nurse Lane, because she was kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in part 2, so would not be surprised if she was getting back to her old ways, because she was like hella creepy. So yeah, but anyways, guys, what did you think about Fear Street Part 3, 1666, and about this trilogy overall? How do you rank the movies? Me personally, I'm thinking, I think honestly, in the order they came out, I think Part 1, 1994 was the best, Part 2, 78 was the medium, and then 1666 was probably the weakest of the trilogy, but still, again, it was a great movie, but all three of these movies were great. The only big thing I didn't really like about 1666 was really just the fact that, you know, I liked that they transitioned back to present day, but it was kind of just like a sudden shift to the fact that, and it just doesn't really it feels like two separate movies when you get it, because, you know, the last movie, Part 2, was all fully 1978, and then the last 10 minutes were present day. This, it was like split in half, so I feel like they could have done maybe even like 4 movies and just had the 1666 one shorter, or even done that, even explored a little bit more there. I feel like they could have done that and then leave a full movie for this final battle and final confrontation with the present day 1994 stuff. That's what I would have preferred, but overall, again, it was a great trilogy. I really enjoyed it. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the movie life.